Let's speak to Michael Johns, who's a former White House speechwriter and national leader of the US Tea Party movement. Michael, good to have you with us. So we heard President Rouhani there in Iran saying that he wanted to expand Iran's military power. A lot of analysts are saying that, look, US sanctions don't appear to be reining in Iran's government. What they are doing is increasing the level of anti-US sentiment inside Iran. What are your thoughts?
Clearly, the sanctions against Iran have denied the government resources that it otherwise would be committing to regional destabilization and its support for Hezbollah and Hamas and in disruptive activities in support of the Houthis in Yemen. All of these initiatives were very troubling. The second component was, of course, despite the agreement, there was every indication that Iran was engaged in the development of nuclear weapons, and that our favorable financial relationship with Iran was actually contributing to that. And of course, U.S. policy toward Iran really has two goals, which I think are globally constructive. One is to end Iran's terrorism throughout the world and its support for terrorism, and two, to ensure it does not develop a nuclear weapon. So the President Trump did the right thing.
And yet, according to the IAEA, sorry, Michael, sorry to interrupt, but according to the IAEA, Iran was complying with the international nuclear deal that you're talking about. And US backing out of that deal has been heavily criticized by Europe, which is even now working on a mechanism to push back against US sanctions in Iran. So isn't this putting the US foreign policy in Iran at odds with some of its major allies?
Well, if you really ponder what the IAEA was saying, even their position is largely one of conjecture. They have not been afforded on-the-ground access to these military sites. No one was afforded access to them. We know that they're building centrifuge construction facilities. We know that they've been engaged in enriching uranium. We know that they've been very aggressively testing their ballistic missile program, which wasn't even prevented under the agreement. All of those initiatives, plus U.S. intelligence and other information that has been made available to this government, lead us to conclude that they are, in fact, in the process of trying to develop a nuclear weapon. And of course, there's been governmental rhetoric to that end over the last few years. So that's hugely troubling. And the goal of the sanctions is to continue to put pressure. I think Iran really is at a crossroads. I mean, the economy in 2018 took a very significant step backward. It regressed from a GDP standpoint. You're seeing a lot of inflation, devaluation of its currency. Pressure is beginning to build on the government, and that's also reflected with the magnitude of rallies and opposition activity throughout Iran.
Well, what impact do you think it will have, though, given that Europe are trying to bypass the trade sanctions on Iran, and Iraq, Baghdad, another Washington ally, is trying to push back against the oil sanctions and says it won't have any part of them. So, where does that leave US foreign policy? I mean, do you feel that it is at odds with other countries?
Right. France, Germany, and the UK have put a lot of effort into coming up with a creative barter-based financial exchange that essentially would allow them to circumvent U.S. sanctions legally. That's okay if it's related to the humanitarian trading that is permitted, like with health supplies, pharmaceuticals, etc. It's not okay, obviously, if it's being utilized to circumvent the sanctions themselves with products that are prohibited for trading. And I think, ultimately and pretty quickly, the U.S. government's going to have to bring this new trading body under some degree of administrative watch and ensure that it's not being utilized toward the actual circumvention of those sanctions. And meanwhile, I think we're starting to see within the EU a growing consensus that, yes, the nuclear development program is very troubling. They've also witnessed assassination attempts throughout Europe against Iranian exiles, and the support for terrorism appears to be unconstrained. All those things are, I think, getting the EU to start to ponder whether President Trump wasn't right all along in getting us out of this agreement and developing a position of containment.
Michael, we'll have to leave it there. But thank you very much indeed for joining us. Good to speak with you. Michael Johns there.